Hello, I'm Kate Freeman, and this is the Daily Dollop. On this episode of the Daily Dollop, I'm going to talk about artificial sweeteners, what they are, how they work, and if they're safe to use. I'm also going to chat through a more realistic long-term solution to eating sweet foods. Well, welcome back to the show, everyone. My name's Kate Freeman. I'm a registered nutritionist and the founder of the Healthy Eating Hub. And fun fact about me is that my real name is actually Katie. Katie. You all know me as Kate, but I was born as Katie, and it wasn't until I was about 18 where I felt that Kate is more mature, and I started introducing myself as Kate, and that's that. It's really only my grandparents who still call me Katie. Occasionally, if I'm feeling a little bit sexy, I'll be like to my husband, call me Katie, but it ends up just being awkward and weird. So anyway, sorry for that overshare. But on to today's show about artificial sweeteners. What I'd like to call them is non-sugar sweeteners, and I'll tell you why in a second. But I guess before we get stuck into the science around non-sugar sweeteners is to just take a step back and think about sweet foods in general, because we really love eating sweet foods. I mean, it's delicious, they taste great, they make us feel good. They're connected with celebration and reward. Most of the time, we really enjoy eating sweet foods. However, we know that eating too many sweet foods and ultra-processed high sugary foods is not good for our health. And so, things like cakes and biscuits and lollies and soft drinks, we know that we shouldn't be eating those all the time. And so, of course, we try not to eat those foods regularly, and we struggle with that. And there's this part of our culture also that I believe is this whole, I just want what I want, but I don't want to have the consequences of my choices. So a lot of us feel like I want to eat cake and I want to eat chocolate and I want the sweet drinks, but I don't actually want the health consequences that come with a high consumption of those things. So in response to this desire to still want to have sweet foods and drinks in our diet is that the food industry plays on that fact and has offered us an alternative. And so, of course, the last, 20, 30, 40 years, the non-sugar sweeteners have replaced sugar in many drinks and foods. And so non-sugar sweeteners are chemicals that either are artificially synthesized or they're naturally occurring, and they add a sweet taste to food without the excess energy that sugar provides food. And so non-sugar sweeteners, they differ in taste and the way that they're metabolized by the body when we compare it to sucrose, which is sugar or white table sugar that we're all familiar with, that we add to our tea and coffee, add to baking, that's in soft drinks and sweet foods. And so what happens is that essentially non-sugar sweeteners, whether they're artificial or naturally occurring, have a higher sweet intensity compared to sugar. So they're sweeter, which means that you don't have to add anywhere near as much of them to the food or drink to get the same level of sweetness. So what this means is that if the non-sugar sweetener does contain some calories, which some of them do, because you only have to add a very small amount to food and drink to get a high amount of sweetness, you can save on the calories compared to regular sugar and all the calories that come along with that. Some non-sugar sweeteners don't contain any energy at all. That's just simply not how they're metabolized by the body. And so essentially there are a number of these non-sugar sweeteners that are approved for use by varying regulatory bodies in countries around the world. And so each country has its own regulatory body that approves the use of these non-sugar sweeteners in food and drinks. And so they've set acceptable daily limits for these sweeteners and that are considered to be safe. Now, I found that over the years, there's really two quite distinct opinions that come out about non-sugar sweeteners, and they're quite polarizing. So on one side, you've got, wow, these are perfect. It means I can have my soft drink or my gummy bears or whatever sweet food, put some sugar in my coffee or sweetness in my coffee, and I don't have to worry about consuming excess sugar. It can help me lose weight, manage my diabetes. Fantastic. So people have, swapped for diet soft drinks and things like that. And of course, if we look at it purely based on the nutrition and energy, is if we have two people who are eating the same, but one person has 600 mils of regular soft drink, the other person has 600 mils of diet soft drink. Well, of course, the person drinking the diet soft drink is going to be consuming less sugar and has a decreased energy intake compared to the person who is consuming the sugar. And so, when we look at it purely at an individual level, it is one way that people can reduce their energy intake, potentially lose weight, without actually having to stop drinking soft drink or the lollies that they were consuming prior. Then on the flip side is that there's lots of information around the internet about how dangerous the use of these sweeteners are. They potentially cause cancer, and they're bad for your health, and they're just replacing one bad habit with another bad habit, and do they actually make you eat better? Maybe they make you eat worse, etc. And so, there's these two quite polarizing, distinct views. One that's like, nah, these are going to help you, and another where these are going to be detrimental to your health. And so what I was really interested in when looking at some research was thinking, okay, well, let's take a really good look at the use of non-sugar sweeteners and see whether or not, there is some benefit or impaired health that comes along with using them. And so what I found is that the World Health Organization actually commissioned a systematic review and meta-analysis, which is a really high quality study that looks at all the studies done on a topic to then come up with a conclusion. So rather than just looking at a single study, it's looking at all of the studies done on a number of aspects of a particular topic, and in this case, non-sugar sweeteners. Because if we were to look at the individual studies, some studies show that they can benefit your health, help you lose a bit of weight, maybe cause small changes in your metabolic markers when it comes to things like diabetes and insulin resistance. Yet other studies show impaired health, so the studies are conflicting. So what a systematic review does is it looks at the whole breadth of research to start to see if they can get a clearer picture. So this study that the World Health Organization commissioned was looking at the health effects of non-sugar sweeteners consumed at or below the acceptable daily limit set by these regulatory bodies. And it was looking at the intakes in generally healthy populations of adults and children who were both normal weight and overweight. There were 56 studies included in the review. Most of those were observational. So that's important to know because observational studies are just lower evidence style studies. We can't control for particular variables. We can simply observe that when one population does something, this is what we see happen. Overall, too, a lot of the studies didn't have a very rigorous study design, and so the systematic review actually concluded that they had overall low confidence in the results of the studies. So what they found was, keeping into account that there's low confidence in the results, is that both using non-sugar sweeteners and not using non-sugar sweeteners didn't seem to have an effect on health outcomes. They neither benefited health or impaired health, which I thought was pretty interesting, actually. So what do we do now? Like knowing this, knowing that if you're consuming a non-sugar sweetener within the acceptable daily limit, what is it Is that a good or a bad thing? And of course, as in many areas of nutrition, there are no black and white answers. There are no rules. And so from a general perspective, it actually makes sense. You would know that from listening to previous episodes of the Daily Dollop that there are key nutrition principles, things like high diet quality, getting in a wide range of nutrients from a wide range of minimally processed foods from all of the food groups, eating according to your individual energy needs, that these are the biggest predictors of long-term health. And when you think about it, the use or the non-use of non-sugar sweeteners is really just a small detail in a much bigger dietary picture. And that whether you consume them or not is actually irrelevant in the context of these more important nutrition principles. So for example, if you were consuming quite poor diet quality or you were quite inconsistent with being a healthy eater and you swapped from soft drink to diet soft drink, thinking that that would at least help, it might reduce your sugar and energy intake a little bit, but in the context of your broader diet, it's probably not really going to help much because there are bigger issues at play. And it's the same for the person who has a really good diet quality. They're eating lots of veggies every day, lots of whole foods. They're consistent at doing that every single day. Whether they decide to have regular soft drink or diet soft drink is probably inconsequential as well. And it's likely that because their diet quality is high, that they're not big consumers of sweetened beverages anyway. And this is the thing with the way that research works, is that there are so many factors that go into our health and our food choices and our behaviors that it's really quite difficult to narrow down really small parts of our diet and see if they're having an effect or not. So remembering that about nutrition research is really important. But I guess a problem, like I said at the beginning, that I've observed is that people want what they want and they don't want the health consequences associated with eating however they want. And I can't tell you how many people that I've chatted to over the years who have come in wanting some special magic diet that I'm going to write for them to lose weight. And I've looked at their current eating habits and I'm like, oh, you probably just need to stop drinking so much iced coffee, maybe cut back your alcohol intake and get some more veggies into your diet. And they're like, oh, no, I want to keep eating those things. Can't you just do stuff with, make my diet stricter? And I think, well, what if you can get some really good wins by consistently making changes in all these areas? Anyway, they just want a strict meal plan to shred fat. They don't actually want to change like these core habits. And I mean, I wholeheartedly believe that you don't have to cut out foods to be healthy. However, you do need to make changes to your diet and adjustments so that you can enjoy your favorite foods but still achieve your weight and health goals. Like, yes, you can eat cake and lose weight, but the way that you do that needs to be quite particular and individualized and the balance be right for you. And change has to be made. And so I think at the end of the day, when it comes to non-sugar sweeteners, if you want to get more nitty-gritty on the acceptable daily limits and the types of sweeteners available, either artificial or natural, you can read further in the study that I'm linked to in the show notes. But pretty much, if you don't want to consume added sugars, but you want a sweet drink, then having a diet soft drink or using non-sugar sweeteners in your tea and coffee is absolutely fine. Just know that there are much bigger, broader dietary principles at play that you might want to focus on that can have a much bigger impact on your health long term. Otherwise, if you prefer to avoid non-sugar sweeteners, just be mindful of the fact that added sugars don't want to feature regularly in your diet, and you want to find the balance that's right for you so that you can enjoy the things that you love as well as achieve your health goals. And just remembering that in both scenarios, it's taking the time to figure out what's right for you, and you cannot simply do that overnight. It just takes time to figure out what the right balance is. Me, if you ask me, I would prefer to just eat the real deal food. I would much prefer to have the real soft drink or the proper chocolate or the real gummy bear lollies. It's just not something that I would include in my diet regularly, and I've created habits that mean that these foods don't feature regularly in my diet, and I feel cool with that. And then when I do eat them, I enjoy the heck out of them, and then I move on with my life. And that's what I want you to do. Don't get caught up in the nitty-gritty of their nutrition. They're a much bigger fish to fry than non-sugar sweeteners. Well, that's it for today's episode on the Daily Dollop. If you do need some individualized help with your nutrition, or you're confused about anything that you've heard on the session today, please check in with me. I'd love to help you. Otherwise, stay classy, team, and I'll see you in the next episode.